Hello, everyone. All right, today we have Emily Chan, a talent sourcer at Microsoft and also the co-founder of Sparkline, to talk to you guys about personal branding. So um, let me know how you guys are feeling in the chat. Are you guys excited? Um, and yeah, we actually, a little bit of tech pod news. We just launched our Instagram account and we are posting um, internship opportunities every single day on our story. So definitely check out TechPod Official on Instagram if you guys are interested. I'll put the link in the description. Link in the chat. And um yeah. And we if you guys missed it, we also have our mentee applications open. So we have a free mentorship program. Last semester we ran it, and it was really successful. There are a lot of people, students who got offers and internships and interviews through the mentorship program. We match you guys with, um, someone who landed a business role in one of these tech companies, and I'll put the link to that in the chat too. It's just a LinkedIn post, and if you just comment under it, you'll get the application. And that is due next Tuesday. Let's see, what else can I promote? TechPod newsletter. Let's talk about that. So every week we also have the we send out a TechPod newsletter, which helps with just a lot of job postings. Honestly, like that's probably the thing that would have helped me the most when I was in college. Like um, just like knowing what kinds of internships are out there is sometimes really hard, especially in the business side of tech. When most of what we hear in college is like software engineering and like consulting, but there's lots of interesting roles that are not necessarily always talked about. So definitely sign up for the TechPod newsletter. Yeah, I'll stop promoting stuff and let Emily get on right now. She's going to do the workshop, teach you guys about personal branding. And then there'll also be a Q&A where you guys can talk and just ask your questions in the chat. So definitely put questions in the chat. And hopefully this will be an interactive session too. So she'll be looking at the chat the whole time and answering any questions you have, and maybe asking you guys questions too. So yeah, I'll just dip and let Emily take it away.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here today. Thank you so much, Joseph, for the warm welcome. So just a little bit of background about how I ended up here today. Um, I am pretty active on LinkedIn, and I kept seeing a lot of stuff about TechPod and stuff that Joseph was posting on TechPod on LinkedIn as well. And after doing some more research, I found that a lot of this stuff was really inspiring, and it was really awesome what he was doing for the students who are interested in the business side of tech. And so I reached out to him, sent him a quick LinkedIn message, and we had a coffee chat scheduled initially for 30 minutes, and that ended up being an hour. I learned so much in that hour, and we talked about potentially doing a collab, which is why I am here today presenting about personal branding to everyone. So, super excited to be here. A little bit more about my background. As you all know, my name is Emily. I'm currently based in Seattle, Washington, but I'm originally from New Jersey, where I graduated from Rutgers University back in May 2020 with my bachelor's in HR and entrepreneurship. After I graduated, I moved to Seattle in July of last year, and I started my first full time opportunity with Microsoft as a talent sourcer. So, in this capacity, in this talent sourcer capacity, I recruit for software engineers who are in the industry. So, anyone with 2+ years of experience are the type of people that I work with. And I am also the co founder of Sparkline. So, Sparkline is an initiative that one of my really great friends and I started over quarantine because we saw that a lot of the people around us and people on LinkedIn They were getting their offers, internship and full time offers, rescinded due to the pandemic. And so we wanted a way to give back to the community, and career coaching or just providing resume advice and interviewing tips was something that we always did for our friends and the people around us. And so we thought, why not extend it to the broader community? And so that was how Sparkline was born. So I would love to hear more about where all of you are from. I know I just gave a whole spiel by myself. So put in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'd love to see if anyone is in the Seattle area. Maybe we can meet up sometime for coffee or bubble tea after the pandemic ends. Oh, New York. Awesome. Hi, Kelly. So on tonight's agenda, first, I'll be talking about what is personal branding. Then I'll cover the 4 steps to your personal brand. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. And I see a question in the chat about what Sparkline is. I'll just answer it really quickly here, but feel free to ask me more questions later as well. But this John asks, is Sparkline a service that people have to pay for? So no, that Sparkline is actually a community that we're trying to build on social media that provides these free tips and advice on the career search and job search, internships, things like that. So it's not a service that you have to pay for. We just provide the free advice online. Okay. So jumping right into it, what exactly is personal branding? I'm sure you've heard this term a lot. People probably throw it around way too often. And there are a couple different definitions for it, but the way I see it, personal branding is how you market yourself to others. It's your unique value proposition and it's your story. It's really what makes a potential employer hire you. As a recruiter, I am looking at tons of resumes. Um, and at some point, they can all blend together. I'm staring at the same piece of paper over and over again. So it's really easy for someone's resume to get lost in that pile of resumes. And so personal branding is how you can exceed the basic qualifications of a job posting, how you can exceed expectations and make a potential employer hire you. It's how you make your resume come alive and tell your story through this 2 dimensional piece of paper. So, personal branding is all of these things, but most importantly, it's about how you make other people feel. Are they motivated by you? Are they inspired by your story? How are you making people feel with your story? If you haven't done so before, try doing a Google search for your name. What can you find about yourself? And do the results represent who you are and what you want other people to see? I've tried doing a Google search for my name before, but it's really hard to find me because there are so many people named Emily Chan. And so that was part of the reason why I became so invested in personal branding. I wanted to establish my presence not only in person in the people I meet, but also online. In this ever increasingly virtual world, it's really important that you get your name out there and you establish your presence online. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that later on in the workshop. So this is a quote by Tom Peters. He's a management consultant and a writer. He says, regardless of age, regardless of position, regardless of the business we happen to be in, all of us need to understand the importance of branding. We are CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. To be in business today, our most important job is to be head marketer for the brand called you. So this was a really great quote for me to shift my mindset and how I thought about myself. I started thinking about myself as a company, figuring out how I can bring value to others. And not only that, but starting to invest in myself as well, investing my time and my energy into establishing this personal brand and marketing myself and sharing it with other people. So, as someone who is really interested in business, in entrepreneurship, this was a really great quote that shifted my mindset. Okay, so how do you exactly develop your personal brand or find your personal brand? So here we broke it down into four different steps. The first step is discovery. The second step is development. The third is communication. And the fourth step is maintenance. And I'll go deeper into each step, but on this slide, this personal branding thing is shown as a linear process, but I want to point out that this is actually a circular process. I'm just not tech savvy enough to find a circle chart, but personal branding is something that you're constantly working on. You're never done with your personal brand. It's constantly evolving with you. And we'll also talk more about that later too. So step one, discovery. This is a two-part process. The first part being gathering internal insights from yourself and then looking outward and gathering external insights. It's really important to do it in this order so that the feedback you get about yourself from yourself is as authentic as possible. I know when you hear opinions and feedback from other people, um, you tend to be influenced by what other people say. And so to keep your own feedback as authentic as possible, you want to make sure that you look inward first and ask yourself these questions. So some questions you can ask yourself are, what are my goals, values, and passions? What motivates me? What am I good at? These can be really hard questions to answer. So be intentional about it. Make sure you set time to do it. For me, every season, I set time on my calendar. I block out time to just sit down and answer these questions to make sure that I'm still on the right path that I need to be on to accomplish my goals. It's a really great way for me to just make sure that I'm heading in the right direction. And if I need to pivot, I'll pivot. It just reorients me so that I know I'm going in the right direction. And as I move on to the next part, external insights, I want everyone to think about this. What is my superpower? What can I do better than anyone else? Share in the chat. As I move on to the next part, I love to come back and read some of your answers. Personally, for me, after doing some soul searching, I found that some of my strengths or some of my superpowers are my organizational skills as well as my tenacity and drive for results. So if there needs to be a certain number that I need to hit, especially with my current role at Microsoft where volume is crazy, crazy high, I am really determined to hit the numbers that I need to hit, and my organizational skills also help with that. And to answer your question, Lisa, yes, anything can be a superpower. It's just, what are you good at? Another superpower of mine is making really fluffy rice every single time. So anything can be a superpower. You just need to figure out how you can use that to your personal brand. So the second part of discovery is external insights. So some questions you can ask other people are, how would you describe me? How do I help you and others? And when you're gathering external insights, you want to make sure that you're using a 360-degree feedback method. And this is where you ask everyone around you for feedback and not just one specific group of people. So if I were to do this, I wouldn't only ask my friends for feedback because that can be very biased. I would ask my friends, my family, my professors, if I was still in college, my coworkers. So everyone around me so that I'm able to get all this get all of this feedback and capture myself in my entirety. These can be really hard conversations to have with other people. So if that's not something you're comfortable with, a method that I really like is to use a Google form and put these questions, send people the link, and ask them to fill it out. And they can even send in their answers without a name so that if they feel awkward sending in constructive criticism, that's completely fine. At the end of the day, you are just trying to grow and be better. So I know it sounds like a ton of work, but you're the most important asset you have, and you want to make sure you invest in yourself first so others, like the people around you and potential employers, can invest in you as well. So, step two is development. The first thing you want to do is identify your target audience. Who are you speaking to? Is it your professors? Is it recruiters? Or is it your peers? Obviously, if you're talking to these different groups of people, your message or the way you talk to them will change. I know I don't talk to my professors the same way I talk to my friends. So, after you identify your target audience, you can easily cater your message to them. Okay. And then you want to define your strengths and weaknesses. So, in step one, where you were discovering yourself, figuring out what you were good at, this next part takes that a step further and you begin to work on those strengths and work on those weaknesses. So, something I like to do is a SWOT analysis. And if you're in business, this shouldn't be too unfamiliar to you. So, a SWOT analysis is basically a strategic planning technique that organizations use to help identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to business projects. And in the case of personal branding, the project is yourself. A personal example for me is, as I mentioned earlier, my superpower or my strength is my organizational skills. And one of my weaknesses is my lack of focus, or I get distracted really easily. Taking that strength, my area of opportunity as a recruiter at Microsoft is that I can drive a lot of business impact in recruiting by delivering a great candidate experience. I'm able to personalize each interaction I have with the candidates I work with because I can easily keep track of all of them with my organizational skills. On the flip side, one of my threats, because of my lack of focus, it can be hard to keep up with the high volume and the fast paced recruiting at Microsoft if I don't stay focused and don't stay on track. So this would definitely be an area that I take into consideration as I'm developing my personal brand. And this is something I'll be working on moving forward. And the last part is making sure that you understand your mission and your why. Why do you do what you do? And who do you do it for? So the second question goes back to identifying your target audience. But it's really important that you keep your target audience in the back of your mind whenever you're delivering your personal brand and your message. So this is a template I really like to follow. It's called a story mission template, and I actually got this from another employee at Microsoft. She's the global head of internships at Microsoft, and she's really, really big on personal branding. I learned so much from her, and she uses this all the time. You really want to understand your mission. So, as the co founder of Sparkline, my story mission is dedicated to young professionals so it can help them understand their strengths, optimize their daily routines, and advance in their careers. And most importantly, make them feel empowered to do so. I think this last part, make people feel, is really the driving force behind your story mission. How are you trying to make people feel? I highly recommend using this story mission to format what your personal brand is and who you're trying to speak to. Okay. And step three is communication. So there are tangible and intangible ways to communicate your personal brand. The first way is through a website. So this can be hosted on tons of different platforms like WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, and all these platforms make it really easy to manage your website. I actually recently started my own personal website, and I was inspired by this book I read recently called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. He basically talks about how important it is to document your journey and your progress. And even if you don't have everything figured out, that's completely fine. People, more often than not, resonate with other people who are going through similar situations who don't have it all figured out. So, as someone, as someone who is still figuring it out, there are going to be tons of other people who can really relate to that. And so I started my own personal website because I wanted to document my personal growth and journey. Sometimes on LinkedIn, I can get really caught up in trying to be perfect and having my life together. And so I'm trying to use this personal website as an outlet where I can talk about all of the mistakes I made and what I've learned from it. So I think a website is a really great way to document either your portfolio if you're into the arts or even just your personal journey and growth. So the second tangible way of communication is through LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a really awesome site. I'm sure most of us here have been using it if you're on this workshop. But LinkedIn makes it really easy because you can publish articles, you can make short posts, but the important thing is to commit to posting content regularly. I know it can be really, really intimidating to put yourself out there, especially when there are so many people who are already posting. You might be wondering, what value can I provide to others? And I do agree, it can be hard sometimes, but as you're formulating your content, try to think about how your content can help and inform others while still generating meaningful discussions. And so, some really easy examples of what you can post are just helpful or interesting articles, videos, books, podcasts that you've read before. Um, you can also recap a workshop or networking event you attended. So definitely make a post about this workshop. Tag me, tag Sparkline, tag TechPod. It's a really great way to show other people that you're committed to your growth and that you're taking initiative in becoming a better version of yourself. Another really easy way to um, curate this content is to just share learnings from a class project. If you're in school, I'm sure you have tons of projects that you've done in the past or are currently doing. You can definitely share what you learned from those. And this, especially if it's in the field or industry that you're in, this will add so much to your background and your portfolio. By posting regularly, you start to establish yourself as an authority and thought leader, and this all builds your credibility. So the other day, I was listening to a podcast with Austin Kleon, who is the author of that book that I just mentioned, and something he said really resonated with me in the podcast. So he said, when you're doing something consistently, something like writing or sharing pictures, etc., it's not that you have something to say, it's that you find out what you have to say. So it's okay if you don't have to know exactly what you have to say, but the process of being consistent, the process of constantly putting yourself out there, this will really help in developing your voice and your personal brand. Even though you want to find what you're all about, what you can offer, it's equally as important to figure out what you're not about, what you don't enjoy, what you're not that great at. So, just a little bit more background about me. In college, I initially started college as a pre med major. So, I spent maybe a year and a half or 2 years taking STEM courses. I took chem, bio. Luckily, I didn't make it to Orgo before I switched majors to HR. But even though that can be seen as a waste of time taking those STEM courses because it didn't go towards my HR major, I found that time really valuable because it taught me that STEM is not actually what I'm passionate about, even though I grew up my entire life thinking I was going to become a doctor. So the moments where you figure out what you don't like and what you're not representing is equally as important as when you figure out what you do like and what you are good at. Social media is also another really great way to connect with people and build a community with the same interests. And that's what we're trying to do with Sparkline. We're trying to build an online community of people who want to feel empowered in their job search and advance in their careers. And resume is pretty straightforward. This is how you communicate with recruiters. One important thing I do want to point out about your resume is that you don't only want to talk about your responsibilities. You want to make sure you talk about the impact that you make in each specific role. Your impact and what you do is your story. It's how you differentiate yourself from others. And so when I'm writing my resume and crafting my story on my resume, something I really like to think about is I kind of pretend there's this red thread running through my resume through each experience. And this red thread connects each experience to the other and pulls my story together. So, how does my experience as the president of a community service organization in college relate to one of my recruiting internships at a tech company in the city? I talk about the transferable skills I learned in each one and make sure to include it and how I'm driving impact in each one too. And so I always make sure that all of my experiences are somehow related to each other, that I'm using all of my transferable skills through all of my experiences, and it pulls together my story and my personal brand. Something that I really like to include on my resume as well is side hustles and passion projects, even if they aren't as big as I want them to be, or um, yeah, even if they're not as big as I want them to be, I still include them because it shows that you have initiative to go after what you're passionate about. And it sets you apart from other people as well. Not everyone is going to be passionate about the same things you are, and not everyone is going to have the initiative you do to chase after these side hustles or passion projects. So always include them. And one more thing I like to include in my resume, if you have space in it, is the skill is what's it called? The interest section at the bottom of a resume. I always like to include that if I have space there because uh, at the end of the day, it's a recruiter reading your resume. If they're interested in something that you're also interested in, that's a connection point that they can latch onto. And so I always like to see when a candidate has a really peculiar interest or something I can relate to, that in addition to their skills and their abilities really just takes them over the edge. And so moving on to intangible ways of communication. So the perception or first impression that others have of you based on your appearance, the way you speak and treat other people, your personalities, your values, these are all intangible ways of communication. Intangible communication speaks to your character. And this occurs when you're not actively communicating with other people. So you want to be aware of the subconscious message that you're sending. Some questions you can ask yourself are: does my general appearance, does the way I speak, does the way I treat others represent what I want to be known for? And if the answer is no, then maybe it's time for a change. And last but not least, the fourth step is maintenance. So, as we've been discussing this entire time, consistency is key. You want to make sure you maintain your brand and maintain this consistency in how you represent yourself. And this ties into posting regularly as well. Providing a steady stream of content that documents your growth and personalizes your journey for your audience is really a really great way to draw in that audience and keep them engaged. So, be sure to be consistent in your message that you're delivering and in the content that you're providing other people as well. You also want to be gathering feedback periodically and be agile after you receive the feedback. You're constantly growing, and so should your brand. Something I like to think about is always being in beta mode. This is something that I learned from one of my professors in college. It was the only class that was useful for me in college. But he says, always be in beta mode. You should always be changing, always be improving yourself. And you're never a fully finished product. You're always changing, always growing, and make sure that your personal brand is growing along with you too. Once again, when you're gathering feedback, use the 360-degree feedback method. Make sure to gather insights from everyone around you. And so at Sparkline, we're always changing. Initially, when we started building out the community, we were strictly focusing on career advice, how to do well internships, how to write your resume, and things like that. And after asking our audience what they want to see, asking ourselves what we want to see, we decided to pivot to include more content that resonates with us. So, more content about stuff like productivity, motivation, and the psychology behind the job search process, in addition to all of the career advice that we're already providing on resumes and interviews and networking. And so, we try to make sure that Sparkline is a good representation of who I am and who Alyssa, who is the other co founder of Sparkline, is. And so, based on the feedback we've gathered from not only ourselves, but our audience, we decided to include more content that resonates with who we are as the co founders. And once again, curating your personal brand is a cyclical process. You're never done. Once you reach step four, maintenance, you're back at step one again, where you're discovering more about yourself and asking other people for feedback and constantly just working on yourself and delivering your message and delivering these feelings that you're trying to create. So, if you remember anything from this workshop, let it be this: people don't remember what you say or what you do. They remember how you made them feel. Although your personal brand can change over time, the feelings behind your personal brand don't really change too much. These are the feelings that are the driving force behind your personal brand. At Sparkline, we're constantly asking ourselves, did we make them feel heard? Did we make them feel empowered? Did we make them feel inspired? These are the feelings we're trying to create for our audience and for ourselves as well. And so, as we end this workshop, I want to leave you with this question: what feeling are you trying to create for your audience? Thank you so much for everyone joining in on this workshop tonight. Feel free to send in any questions you have in the chat. You can also follow us, on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn as well. Or if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot us an email at hello@sparklinecode.com. And just plugging my personal blog as well. Feel free to follow me and follow along my journey as I figure out who I am in this new city, new job. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone. Feel free to drop your comments in the chat. So let's see what questions we have. I see a lot of people switched in college. That's so relatable. Pre-med to business, pre-med to marketing. So marketing was actually something I was interested in pursuing, but I would have had to stay behind in school, and that wasn't something I wanted to do because school is so expensive for no reason. So, um, so I decided to be in HR, and it was honestly such a great decision. Okay, let's see. So, fun fact, right before this presentation, I was really nervous about presenting because I saw that there were 500 plus signups, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've never presented to so many people before. So I made a blog post about it and basically writing down all the reasons why I was nervous for the presentation or the workshop and coming up with a rebuttal as to why each of those reasons were invalid. And that was a really great exercise in helping me overcome my fear of doing this workshop or doing this presentation. So if you're ever nervous in the future for anything, a big presentation in class or at work, definitely try that exercise. List out all the reasons why you're nervous, and then um, try to come up with reasons why those are invalid. Okay. So a question from Sienna Joy: do recruiters actually read cover letters? I can't say for all recruiters. I know some find them really, really valuable, but personally for me, I don't even know if Microsoft requires cover letters, but I don't really read them. I just spend maybe 10 to 15 seconds, honestly, on a resume, looking to see if they have the skills and qualifications that I'm looking for, or if they have any interesting experiences that jump out at me, and then I decide if I want to move them forward in the process. So take that with a grain of salt. I would say most recruiters don't actually read cover letters just because the volume is so intense, and they don't really have the time to read all cover letters. That being said, I think it's still a great skill to learn how to write a cover letter. So definitely don't discard it. Let's see. What else? So Li Yang asked, how did you navigate your job search to get to where you are now? Um, Something that really helped me was keeping an Excel sheet of what I or where I applied to, what platform I used to apply to that role, and what the status was of the application. And so when I was initially doing my internship search, that wasn't something I did. So when I would get an update on a job application, I wouldn't even remember like when I applied to it or who the contact was for it. So it was just really messy in the beginning. And then I started using an Excel sheet to keep track of where I applied to, the status, who the point of contact is. And another really great thing about keeping this Excel sheet is that if you don't have that much luck during one recruiting season, you can always go back to that Excel sheet and find the recruiter's contact information, who you were in contact with the last recruiting season, and reach out to them again to see if they have any new opportunities that are available for you. So that is my biggest tip for the job search process. And also something that I didn't do enough of when I was in college was networking. I definitely did not utilize LinkedIn as much as I should have, but it's just such a great tool and you can connect with literally anyone you want to. And one tip I have when you're networking is to always reach out to alum. Reach out to alum who are working in your dream companies, in your dream roles. I know whenever I see someone reaching out to me from Rutgers, I have a soft spot for them. I'm like, okay, let's jump on a coffee chat. How can I help you? And so when you have that connection point, it makes it easier for the other person to want to help you because they think, oh, like I was in their shoes like a year ago. So definitely utilize LinkedIn to jump on coffee chats, and reach out to alum who are working at the companies that you want to work at. And the other important thing about LinkedIn is that recruiters will also reach out to you. That is how I got my job at Microsoft. So make sure your LinkedIn is up to date and being consistent on or being active on LinkedIn and trying to post consistently puts you out there and gets you possibly on their feed. I found tons of software engineers just on my homepage on my LinkedIn for the roles I work on. So definitely try to utilize LinkedIn as much as possible. So the backstory behind how I got my job at Microsoft is I was applying to so many different places my senior year for a full-time opportunity and made it through to the final rounds for a couple of them, but got rejected. And I was honestly feeling a little bit down and unmotivated near the end of the fall semester. And I kind of took a break and in the beginning of the spring semester, a recruiter at Microsoft reached out to me on LinkedIn about this really great opportunity. I applied, they flew me out to the campus, I interviewed, and the rest was history. So I so believe in utilizing LinkedIn in your job search. I mean, my job is to go on LinkedIn and look for qualified candidates. My entire team, that's what we do. And so LinkedIn is a really powerful way to connect with recruiters and get yourself out there. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Okay, so Deep said, could including cover letter kill your chances? Definitely not. I don't really think personally it makes a really big difference. I know when I was applying to jobs or internships, I never included resume or never included cover letters if it wasn't mandatory. So I don't really think it has a really it's not going to kill your chances if you include one. Um, okay, so the next question is from Saad. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He says, I'm interning at Microsoft this summer and I was wondering, as a recruiter, if you had any tips on standing out as an intern. First off, congrats. I'm super excited for you. It's a really great company to work for. So definitely feel free to ping me when you start if you want to set up some time to chat or anything. But my biggest tip for anyone starting at any company is to take advantage of the network you have within that company. Reach out to people to do coffee chats within the organization. You can learn so much about how to succeed not only in your role but in that company, and moving forward to how you can succeed at any other company. There are so many people that are at your disposal who are, and as someone who's new, they're probably more than willing to help you out. So always play the I'm new card. I remember probably the first month or two, I would say, hey, I recently started at Microsoft. Can we jump on a chat for like 15 minutes? And so always make sure you're networking, not just outside your company for future opportunities, but within your companies for any internal opportunities that might come up, or any exciting projects that you could potentially be a part of. Um, Personally, for me, from reaching out to people and networking within Microsoft, I was able to meet Miri Rodriguez, who I talked about earlier. She's a global head of internships. She's super awesome. I was also able to start working on. I was able to pitch a business proposal about this project that I'm working on at Microsoft. I don't know if I can say it yet, but it was really exciting for me because I was able to pitch this business proposal with one of my colleagues to the senior leadership team at work. And as someone who just started maybe 6 months ago, that was a really big deal to me. So definitely make sure you take advantage of the network at the company that you're joining. And I think this will also make you stand out as an intern because you're trying to understand other people, build those connections, understand what the need is and where you can help out too. So honestly, networking is the key. Okay. Okay, so John says, is there a certain niche for being in sourcing or recruiting? Most say must have a passion, but most roles for tech giants seem like sales roles, and that can devalue the experience. Thoughts? I would say sourcing and recruiting is a combination between sales and marketing. Um, it's like sales because you're trying to sell the candidates on the company, on the experience that they'll have at the company. And it's like marketing because you're trying to present the company in a way that people would want to come. And that is why I like recruiting so much because it blends both of those together. I'm able to talk about the employer brand and um, really evangelize what it's like to work at Microsoft. And um, people say it devalues the experience. I don't think it really devalues the experience because you're still making a connection with all of the candidates you work with, and providing them a good candidate experience. And so it's really great whenever I have candidates come to me and talk about how great the candidate experience was and how helpful it was. And even if they didn't get an offer, I've never had a bad situation where candidates were were angry at me or anything like that. So I think being able to provide a really great candidate experience throughout the entire process makes it really fulfilling, and it doesn't devalue the experience at all, even though the whole time I am trying to sell them this opportunity. Um, and I guess the other thing that makes it different from sales is that you're not really asking them to pay you money. You're paying them money to do the job. So it's not like you're asking them for something upfront. So I think it's a win-win. It's a blend of recruiting and or sales and marketing, and it's a really great way to build connections with a lot of different people. Um, okay, let's see. Anne Hua says, "How can a candidate stand out on LinkedIn?" Um, So I'm going to assume you're talking about when you're reaching out to recruiters. A couple different things you can do. Definitely, if you're sending a connection request, make sure to personalize your message. Don't even think about sending a connection request if you're not going to include a message. I get so many of those, and I try to give them the benefit of the doubt um, and think that they don't know any better, but it can get really annoying if, as a recruiter, if you're getting a ton of connection requests and you have no idea who they are. Like, why should I add you to my network? So always make sure you include a personalized message. Um, Try to find a connection point in their profile, or if you're trying to get an internship where you applied somewhere, always make it easy for the recruiter to hire you. Don't come to the recruiter and ask them, "Hey, is there an opportunity for me here?" Do your homework. Find out what opportunities are there and find out what opportunities you're interested in before even reaching out. That makes it so much easier for the recruiter. And talk about why you're qualified for the role as well, why you're a good candidate. Um, so those are two things to do when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn. Let me see if I can think of anything else off the top of my head. Um, but yeah, those are just the two biggest things that I personally see as a recruiter. Um, One, it's nice to see a personalized message because I'm human too. Like, even though recruiting is my job, I still have a life outside of recruiting and I still like to be treated as a human. And two, at the same time, it is my job to recruit people. So if you are qualified, I want to see that you're qualified and I want to see what role you're interested in so I don't have to go hunting for you. So yeah, I would definitely say those two things will make you stand out on LinkedIn when you're reaching out to a recruiter. Okay. Uh, Chiang Sun, I think that's how you pronounce your name. What should I talk about during coffee chats? Coffee chats are It's really up to you what you want to talk about. What are you curious about? Whenever I reach out to people, it's people that have a background that I kind of want to have. So if they're working at a company or working in a role that I'm interested in, I'll ask them a lot about what their um, what their role is like. And something I really like to ask is, what is your biggest challenge as like this person in this role? So like, let's say marketing as an example. What is the biggest challenge as a marketer for this company? And the reason why I like to ask this question is because it helps me understand what the role consists of before I try to pursue it. But at the same time, it gives me insight into what this person is struggling with and how I can potentially help them, how I can potentially add value to their lives. And so networking is all about how you can provide value to other people. If you're going into the mindset, or if you're going into networking with the mindset of, oh, what can other people do for me? Then you're entering it completely wrong. You always want to be thinking about, what value can I provide? And it's very similar to your personal brand. What value can I, as this person, provide? Um, and so you always want to go into these coffee chats thinking about what you can provide for the other person. So try to understand what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, what they're currently doing in their lives, more so than just their work, honestly. I think it just gets really interesting when you go outside of work and outside of, what's your major, what's your job. So definitely have those conversations, but also try to dig a little deeper and ask them, what are your goals? What are your passions? What do you want to do in the next 5 years? Stuff like that. And the rest is really up to you. You don't really have to. You don't really have to have like a set list of things to talk about. You can honestly just see where the conversation takes you. I usually try to prepare a list of questions or topics that I want to go over, but then I let the conversation just flow. And it's really important to ask follow up questions as well. You don't want it to kind of feel like an interview where you're asking them a question, and then they're answering, and then you're asking another question. You want it to flow, so ask follow up questions and be genuinely interested in the other person. So yeah, I hope that helps. Um, okay, this is a really interesting question. So Joe says the Microsoft ATS is fairly complex with regard to personally inputting keywords. Should we be including more or less to meet these specifications for the job? Um, so these keywords, it's really helpful because once you're in our system, some members of our team, they like specifically source for candidates, like past candidates in our system. So the more, I would say the more keywords you can put in based on, of course, you want to be truthful about your skill set, but the more you can put in, the easier it would be to potentially find you again in our system. So I guess try to just put as much as you can, um, as long as it's truthful to your skill set. So I know a lot of people get really annoyed when when you have to upload your resume and then put in all your job experiences. And I know personally when I was applying for jobs, I hated that. I was like, why are you making me put it in again? Just look at my resume. But the reason for that is because, as I mentioned, recruiters can go back into our system, into our ATS, and source for past candidates that now meet our qualifications. So maybe they didn't meet our qualifications before, but maybe a year later they do now. And so we spend a lot of time within our ATS looking for past applicants. And the way we find them is through those keywords or through those past experiences that you have to manually input instead of just your resume because the ATS can't parse that. So yeah, always be sure to put in your work experience again. Okay, so Kevin Lynn said, do you have a preference for one column versus two column resumes? Personally, I always do one column because it's I find that you can put the most amount of information with when it's one column. From all the two column resumes I've seen in the past, there's so much white space that can be used more strategically. So I would always try to do one column if possible. Also, another thing about two column resumes is that if you're uploading it as a Word document, which I don't recommend, always use PDF because the format can get messed up if you upload it as a Word document. But that's the other thing. Formatting can be really hard with two column resumes. So I just always recommend one column resumes. Let's see. I think I have time for one more question. Let's see. Okay, Angelica asks, what are things candidates should ask recruiters during phone interviews to make them stand out? So some things I really like to ask are not the generic, what is the culture like? Like you can do your research on that. And oftentimes recruiters are always going to make it seem greater than it is, or they'll just really try to fluff it up for you. So I like to ask questions about how, if I were to be in this role, how I can succeed in it. So some questions I can ask are, what does success look like for someone in this role 30 days into it, 60 days into it, 90 days into it? So this would give you a good idea of what your expectations are at each month into your role. So you're not stepping into something that doesn't make sense for you. Um, so I really like asking that question. Another thing I like asking is, what is something that someone or what is a trait that someone who was successful in this role had? And based on the answer they give, it can be really insightful to to knowing what you need to do to be successful in that role. Is that a trait you already have, or is that something you're still working on? So it just definitely gives you a lot of insight when you're asking about previous people who are successful in that role. Um, and one last thing I really like asking, people always ask, what is your favorite thing about working here? But I always like to ask, what is your least favorite thing about working here? And most of the time, I always get like cop out answers from recruiters. They always say, like, I can't even think of anything, but they don't give me like a real solid answer. But I always like to ask that question anyway because it puts them on their toes. And um, if they do give me an answer that's pretty interesting, it gives me a lot to think about the company and if I actually want to work for them based on the answer. But yeah, if a recruiter is truthful with you, that's really awesome. Your recruiter should be your biggest advocate throughout the entire process. So you always want to make sure that you're working with a recruiter that is actually partnering with you throughout the entire process. I think that's time for me. Not sure if Joseph is going to come back. Let me just.
Yep, I'm back. All right,
Hello.
awesome. Thanks so much, Emily. This is really cool. I definitely learned a lot. We have a couple minutes, so I'm just gonna plug a couple things that you guys might be interested at TechPod, and then we'll just close it out. So, yeah, just a quick reminder: this mentorship application is due on Tuesday. So definitely comment your email on this post right here if you're interested. Last cohort, we matched students and young professionals with mentors at Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Amazon, other top tech companies. And it's a uh, either 8 weeks or 6 weeks long. Um, and you just go through your resume, cover letter review, network. You meet a bunch of new people. You kind of join the tech pod community and get to join uh, us in our LinkedIn journey. And oh yeah, by the way, LinkedIn, definitely make posts, like Emily said, with just something that you learned. I think one of the biggest things that I learned this summer in personal branding is just like posting on LinkedIn and how much reach you can get and how many connections you can make through posting. Um, I think at the beginning of the summer, I only had 400 connections, and I made my first post, and it randomly got like something like 5,000 views. So like when you make a post, it doesn't just send it to your immediate connections because of the way the algorithm works. You can get a lot of visibility and meet new people through LinkedIn posts. So whenever you go to an event like this, you know, there's 93 of you here right now. So the 93 of you here are, you learn something, got insights that nobody else on LinkedIn has, right? So if you make a post about that, that's adding value to the rest of your network. So if you learn something, put it into some bullet points, make it look nice, put it into a post. If you tag me, you can tag Vicky too, my co-founder at TechPod. You can tag Emily, and we'll interact with your post and give it a boost and engagement so you can get some more views and make some more connections. So yeah, definitely sign up for the mentorship program. Sign up for TechPod newsletter. Follow Sparkline on social media. And yeah, have a good night, guys.